Not everything in the shadows is a ghost. Sometimes we see things that we know in our bones were never human. Strange creatures that flit just beyond our periphery and make scratching sounds in the night. Our guest today repeatedly sees entities of a different nature. Are they creatures poking in from another dimension? And if so, can they see us back? We'll let you decide after you hear her stories. Today on Homespun Haints. Hello, Hainted Loves. Welcome to Homespun Haints. I'm Becky.
And I'm Diana.
And it is 2023. I hope you all are ready for the madness that will ensue. It's actually been 2023 for, a little over a month now. But that's okay. Here we are in your audio flesh windows, bringing you some content from Girl Henry Rollins. You heard from her last November around Thanksgiving. She is not only a brilliant historian when it comes to her home of Salem, where she's also a ghost tour guide, but as you can imagine, a spooky lady like herself, she's got a lot of stories from her own youth and current experiences of ghosts and other fae-like creatures. We're going to be hearing from Girl Henry Rollins here in a little bit. Now that I've tantalized you.
You've been tantalized. I have a story that has to do with tantalizing things.
Oh.
Should you want to hear it?
Of course I do.
Okay, it's a little body.
Body? Ooh.
In my way. You remember how you made me listen to a bunch of penis stories last season? Well, this is my revenge.
Oh, is it a vagina story?
Vagina's not homologous to the penis. Come on, get real. Get with the anatomy. So, Amber plays this video game called Skyrim. I think it's got another name, but it's a version of Skyrim. I just watch her play casually while I'm doing other things like researching a bunch of stuff about owls for this podcast. But the other day I was noticing that, so it's based on the Fallout game mechanics. So it looks very similar to Fallout, except it takes place in the past instead of the future. Another alternate world, but much more Dungeons and Dragons-y kind of thing.
Okay. It's all Greek to me. I don't know anything about games.
You're not a gamer. Well, my gamers will appreciate that. In the Fallout world, you navigate. You don't need to have a map up all the time because you have a navigation bar at the top. Just like when your car has on the rearview mirror, when you have a fancier car than I have, it's got the direction that the car is going on.
North, west, east, all that.
Yes, the compass on the mirror, yeah. Mm-hmm. So you've got that on your screen when you are playing this game, Skyrim. And some of the things that show up on there are north, south, east, and west, but also little symbols for different things that you could navigate to in that direction. And usually the symbol's like a little tent or a little campfire. But I noticed that there was one shape in one part of the game that looked like a little clitoris.
Is it navigating to a brothel?
Right. That's exactly what I asked Amber. Where does that clitoris lead you? She said, what clitoris? I said, the one that's right on the navigation bar. She said, oh my. Because it looks very much like an anatomically correct clitoris. Have you seen the newer anatomical models of the clitoris? It's actually been expanded quite recently in the texts because it wasn't really defined. The actual anatomy of the clitoris wasn't defined until 1998. Did you realize this? 1998!
Nobody cares about the clitoris.
Right? It's part of a documentary from 2003 called The Clitoris, The Great Unknown. But Helen O'Connell, one of the foremost female urologists of her time, actually discovered which nerves innervate the clitoris, which is important because a lot of surgeries before that would lead to complete inorgasmia in women because they're just like, women don't need these parts. She actually redefined the clitoris. So an anatomically correct clitoris looks like this little map legend. To describe it in audio format, it looks like a four-legged stool, kind of, but the front two legs are large and bulbous, and then the back two legs are little tentacles.
That's what the clitoris looks like? Like a T-Rex. Like a backwards T-Rex. You know how the T-Rex has like really big back legs and short front
Yeah,
legs.
so really thick, big, bulbous front legs, and then little wispy tentacle back legs, and then it's got the little hook at the top.
A hook?
The hook at the top. That's the head. That's the part you can actually physically see. It's protected under its little hood.
It has a hood and a head.
If you broke it down and took its little hood off, it does kind of look like a little dinosaur. Maybe more like a brontosaurus.
I had no idea. So it's its own, like, little creature down there.
It is. It could wander around like Thing from the Addams Family. I'm hoping that Thing's girlfriend is just a disembodied clitoris. We haven't gotten that far in Wednesday yet, but I'm hoping. Guys, think about it. It's not a bad idea. So I looked it up on the Skyrim wiki, and I figured out that these little drawings of clitorides, and yes, clitorides is the plural of clitoris.
I'm learning so much today. This is so cool. All right.
So apparently, this symbol is the Skyrim symbol for Nordic ruins. When you hover over a location, it shows its name, the name of the location. One of these clitorides, it's called Hag's End. And I was like, oh, that would be a great name for a clitoris. And then the next one that came up was Dustman's Cairn. I was like, oh, that's even better. That's totally the name of it.
That's a clitoris that has not seen some action lately.
Well, it's a cairn.
He was having some jokes in there. That's an Easter egg, I'm sure.
I think it's definitely supposed to look like a clitoris because when you look down the list on Skyrim's wiki of Nordic ruins names, all of them would be great names for clitorides. They're fascinating. So, my gamer friends, Hainted Loves who are gamers, next time you're playing Skyrim, you come across a Nordic ruin, just think, would this be the perfect names for the clitoris? Let me know. Shroud Hearthbarrow, Shriek Wind Bastion.
Thank you, Diana. I learned a lot. I thought this was going to be a boring discussion of gaming, but no, it was so much more. If you want additional content from us besides what you can hear here in your ear holes, please check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Homespun Haints on both. We put a lot of stuff out on both of those platforms. If you're interested in checking out our Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/homespunhaints. I hope you guys feel very educated about a part of anatomy that has remained in obscurity for millennia.
Until 1998.
Until 1998, when we learned it looked like a brontosaurus. And on that note, let's bring on our guest, Girl Henry Rollins, after these messages. Today on the show, we are so thrilled to bring back Girl Henry Rollins. You heard her for a special Thanksgiving episode that we aired around Thanksgiving. And she is back to share with us some of her personal ghost stories because not only is she a very, very spooky lady, she grew up in a haunted house. And I suspect the ghosts that she encountered in that house are not the only ones she's encountered in her life. So I'm really excited to talk to Girl Henry Rollins yet again and hear all of her ghost stories, or as many as we can pack into this episode. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's so good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. Thanks for having me back.
I understand that you grew up in a haunted house.
Not just one, a bunch of them. I moved around a lot because my stepdad did the rebuilds of hydroelectric plants. And so we moved to new places a lot. And we were often living in houses that were a little older or that usually had been occupied by other people. And there's just been a lot of stuff dispersed throughout. We've just had weird experiences. The first really creepy thing I remember was my dad lived in this gigantic old Victorian house in North Little Rock, Arkansas. And I remember waking up and looking out the window one time and seeing like this almost cartoonish UFO. I probably would have been about 5. It was really, really weird. And my dad saw weird stuff at that house too. Like the big black triangles. My dad actually went out in his yard and he looked up and he saw one of those. And he said it was so big it was blocking out the constellation of Orion, but he thought it was a stealth bomber because it was the 80s. So he goes and gets my stepmom at the time and brings her out, and she just looks up and screams and runs back in the house. And he stands out there and watches it for a while, and he said it didn't make any sound or anything like that. And then he saw in about I think it was 89 when they released the stealth bomber to the public, and he saw how small it was. He was like, oh, that wasn't us.
Huh.
That was Arkansas. And then Arizona was weird. We had the Goatman legend that was in the res town I lived in. I suspect that it's from the native population, the Colorado River Indian tribes community. Everybody believed in it. The Goatman was a half goat, half man type creature that was said to terrorize the entire res town. It was Parker, Arizona. There's a local documentary that people made about it, actually. My baton teacher was in it. There was a dormant volcano with a big P on the side because out west they put the initial of the nearby town in white stones on the side of mountains. And Parker happened to have one. We called it P Mountain. And there were kids that said they saw cattle mutilation type things out there. And the Goatman supposedly was always on the road out in front of the mountain. Everybody was always nervous at their campsites too. There were people just of all walks of life that swore it was true. Now I'm wondering if it was one of those. I don't like to say the word because I've been told not to say the word by native people. It's Skinwalker. I don't like to say that word, but I wonder sometimes if that's what the Goatman was.
Could you give us a little like campfire version of the legend of Goatman? I'm really curious about that.
Oh, okay. All the locals in Parker, whether it's native people or white people or not, they all say that the Goatman is a man's torso and his head is kind of messed up looking and he's got sharp teeth and big huge horns on his head, almost like the Greek satyr, only kind of big. And his lower half is black and he's got hooves and goat's legs and everything. And he's got long fingernails on his hands and he's greasy and dirty and his man parts are hairy on his chest and stuff. And he smells really bad and you usually can smell him before you see him. There's talk that it was a witch that hated somebody in the area that turned into the Goatman, and some people just say it's always been there. He's incredibly fast. One of the stories I remember the most was somebody said that they were on a four-wheeler. They always would go out tending their gardens because animals would eat produce and things like that. And natives took care of their agriculture that way. They would actually have people out there. And they saw it and it started to run for them and it actually almost caught them on a four-wheeler going full speed. That was one of my favorite ones. Pretty creepy.
Was it that he was cursed somehow that he became like that?
Nope, they just said he was there. Nobody really describes why. They just said it was a spirit or a person or a witch or whatever that became the Goatman that wanted to take revenge on the population. I don't know, probably something to do with all the real estate developers moving there and putting in casinos.
So what happens if the Goatman catches you? Do you become a Goatman too?
No, they said he would just eat you.
Oh, okay.
And there was actually talk about, during the Satanic Panic, there was talk about a couple of young girls that were found dead. I don't know if it was true, but I heard it from my friend's mom, who was a police dispatcher. So they think it was a satanic cult, but not like we think of satanic, like just those people who were doing messed up stuff because for whatever reason. I don't even know what they're called when they do stuff like that. But yeah, they think it was a cult. But some people tried to blame the Goatman. You should definitely go on YouTube and watch. It's about an hour long. Some locals made the documentary. I think it's called In Search of the Goatman. But make sure you type in Parker, Arizona into the search. I would definitely check out that documentary. It's for free.
So did you see anything weird in Arizona?
I started seeing shadow people. I was like 9. I was playing outside with my friends in Arizona on a baseball diamond. There's like 6 of us. And we're just sitting out there being little dusty ass kids playing on a reservation. And one of the kids just leans over and barfs, like no reason. And her sister's trying to collect her. And I look over and I see this thing. And I'm not trying to psych myself out or anything. We're not playing pretend. Nothing. There's this like black slinky looking thing. It's like 6 inches in diameter. It's like 6 feet long and it's just kind of bouncing like a slinky or across the sky about 4 feet in the air. And I'm like, what in the that? Of course, in my little head, I'm not thinking that. I just tell everybody it's time to run because nobody saw what I saw.
Whoa.
And I just kind of got everybody out of there. And that was the first time I saw one of those.
Like a slinky, so kind of like a snake shape?
Yeah, but no defined head or anything, just like a blob.
So, what other shadow people have you seen?
Let's see. There's Michigan, and Michigan was just always weird. Every house we moved into was creepy. One place, it was beautiful, almost like a Victorian house that had a porch put on the front of it. And it had these big, heavy doors, the kind with the leaded glass in them, and the big, heavy doorknobs and stuff like that. That was the front door. And I used to wake up with like a big shadow figure standing at the foot of my bed or standing over me, like staring at me.
Whoa. So, at what age did that start for you?
When I was 15 is when I started seeing the one over my bed, and that's when I started seeing them a lot more. And that was in Michigan in that big house.
Was it every night that that would happen?
Almost. I would wake up and it would just be there. It would just be like the shadow of a guy, head and shoulders, no hat man thing. It would either be standing at the foot of my bed, where when I opened my eyes, I would see it, just like anybody would be standing at the foot of your bed. It was like there. And it would always be the side of the bed I was laying on. But then it would also be leaned over me like that if I laid on the outside of the bed. Like if I woke up and I'd gotten to the outside of the bed. So it would lean over me, be like looking in my face. And I would wake up and it would be like somebody's face was in my face, but it was just a blob. And I thought I was nuts. I thought I had so much wrong with my brain. I remember like I got really upset and I told my mom, and she's like, honey, you've been doing weird stuff like that your whole life. Don't freak out. You're not crazy. But I still went and got tested for delusional illnesses and stuff.
Oh, wow.
I thought I was crazy.
It must have been so terrifying.
The shadow guy over my bed, that was the beginning of it getting really bad and then bothering me all the time. I saw them really frequently until I was about 26, and then I got really good at keeping them out of the house.
Were you in the same house this whole time, or did they follow you from one house to another?
Yeah, they follow. They don't care about the place. There are places that have concentrations of them. I don't know what they are, but the consensus with everybody is they never were people. Most people that you talk to about shadow people are going to be like, these are not actually people. They never have been people. They're not the ghosts of people.
What was the moment? What happened that made you realize, oh, I'm not crazy. This is a paranormal event?
It was actually when my mom believed it, when my mom was like, it's not you, it's the house. And she actually started telling me about the things that she had experienced in the house. My mom was home in bed and she hears dad come home across that noisy porch and then through the big heavy antique door, then up the creaky stairs into the bathroom, shut the door, and then walk into the closet. And she keeps waiting and waiting for him to come out of there and waiting there to hear the shower turn on or whatever, or have him walk into the bedroom or whatever. And it never happened. And then she heard it again, and it was dad actually coming home. And then there was another time she was home and she was in the basement doing laundry, and the basement was so creepy. It didn't matter how finished it was. It felt like somebody's watching you all the time down there. But she was down there just doing laundry, and she heard somebody walk across the big porch through the big old heavy door, walk across the floor and out the back door. And it was raining cats and dogs. So if anybody had come inside, it should have been wet. So she goes upstairs and she checks and she sees that both the front doors are locked and shut and that the floor is dry, no footsteps anywhere, but the back door is standing wide open and it had been locked. So that was weird. She didn't tell me any of that stuff until I started complaining about stuff. Like, she told me more about it actually after we moved. She didn't really want me to know that there was more going on, but she definitely made sure I knew I wasn't crazy. She just started talking to me about how I used to like ask her questions about stuff she was thinking about when I was little, like stuff that I shouldn't know about. I couldn't have ever heard her talking about. Mainly stuff that was just in the forefront of her mind. But she said I used to do that all the time when I was little. So she's like, don't worry, it's not you. You're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. And that helped a lot, which I think is probably why I have this very healthy skepticism about stuff on top of being able to admit when I see something, because I don't just believe everything that I hear. I don't expect everybody to believe me. I could sound completely crazy because I have difficulty articulating myself on stuff like that when I'm not writing it down. I have to make room in my mind for whatever they are, and I can't let it drive me crazy, whatever they are. And I can't really tell too many people because if I do, they're going to think I'm crazy or they're going to make fun of me, which is hard enough because being autistic didn't matter if people were making fun of you or not. It makes you feel like it because you're so inherently just slightly different than everybody. So I didn't really want people to know, but I really don't believe stuff till I see it. Like the other night in the graveyard when we went to the Broad Street Cemetery, that was freaking scary too. I wouldn't even expect you to believe it either. It was the weirdest thing. I got scared in the Broad Street Cemetery, and I didn't think I ever would get scared in that place because it's such a wholesome place. Oh no, no. We went to the Broad Street Cemetery on live the other night. We walk into the cemetery, and it was like this wind rushed around me, and there was what sounded like four bipedal people or creatures or something running around me. And it was almost like they had herded me away. I felt like I was caught in a fairy wind or something. It was just the weirdest thing. And then it was gone. When I got scared, it was like a big whoosh of wind, and it was almost like I was being blown along with them. And you could kind of hear them running.
Whoa.
And then they were gone. It was weird.
Can you describe what a fairy wind is?
Well, I mean, it's just something that popped into my head to say, honestly, like a wind that's supposed to blow you to fairyland, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Full of leaves and the little fairies blowing in the wind. It's really hard to describe. I don't know what the things looked like, but I know they kind of were spindly, like people, but spindly. Not all the way people looking. It's really hard to describe. But it was like they were there and then they were gone. Kind of a brown color to them, like a tan color.
So you saw them. You felt it. You saw it. You heard it. All of the things.
Yeah, it was
Oh.
creepy. Like I didn't see it with my eyes while it was happening, but it was like in my mind while it was happening, but I heard it with my ears and I felt everything. It was almost like they were so clear that you could almost see them with your eyes. If that makes any sense. It's like the same way as seeing shadow people. You see them, but you don't. Like it's a corner of your eye type thing. I could get color and shape and position. It was very strange. It was the weirdest crap that I've dealt with here. But I mean, stuff falls over in this house all the time. Like this house is super haunted. We see a little tan thing running around on the floor sometimes. Makes me sound like a complete loon when I talk about it. About the size of a lobster. Makes a bit of a scratchy noise. I'll always think it's one of the cats chasing something, and it never is. They're usually somewhere being lazy when that happens, and none of our cats are brown.
You said you got really good at keeping the shadow people out of the house. Tell us about that. What'd you do?
I've always done a very intuitive practice, more of a cunning craft type person. Basically, just what I do is I make my little charm bags and stuff, and I'll nail them to the inside of the window, stuff like that. Or witch jars, those are meant to protect and go inside the house, and I'll have those, things like that. But I'll do a little something every time I move into a house, and that usually keeps them out. And I think the rest is just sheer rage. Like, I got to a point that I was just like really mad. I was like, you have no right to keep coming in my house. Leave my kids alone. Stop frightening my teenager, because my teenagers started seeing them now. Intention works a lot.
And also that maternal rage is unlike
Yeah.
anything else. Getting back this lobster thing in your house, I don't know if you have any theories about what it is. If you have all these protections up in your home and this thing is still there, would you assume that it's something benevolent then?
I assume it's something that was here before I got here.
Oh,
Okay.
so the wards prevent things from coming in, not necessarily expel things that are already there.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't feel like it's my business telling whatever was here to leave.
Yeah, they were here first. I get it. When we talked to you over Thanksgiving, you mentioned briefly that you had seen a Pukwudgie.
Oh, like the little critter thing? Yeah.
So tell us about that and how that happened.
It looked like a little brown critter. Everything's brown if you're noticing. I've had a trend. That's my least favorite color, but everything's like kind of beige. It's beige. It was weird because it just looked like a little kind of wrong person that was sort of naked, but sort of squatty. But it was also kind of hairy on the front. I don't know what its face looked like at all, but its head looked flat on the top, and its shoulders were hunched up level with its like ears or something, and its arms were a little too long. Its feet looked kind of flappy. And I was like, okay, well, there that is. And then it was gone.
Where did you see it?
On the other side of my house.
It was in your house?
No, not in it, like outside on the little sidewalk out back. The backyard's weird here. It's weird. I don't know what the hell this house area was used for, but it was obviously weird.
So just there, you've seen a lobster-like critter that likes to crawl through your house.
Yeah, that's inside.
You've seen a Pukwudgie in your back, like on the sidewalk behind your house. And then you've seen these fairy spindly creatures at the Broad Street Cemetery. And they're all brown.
Well, more like beige, but yeah.
Beige. Are they that color because
the light?
It's just the way the light was hitting them, you think?
Yeah, like I think it's like all my eyes could see, really.
So maybe if you were in that realm, you'd be able to see more colors.
Yeah.
And you think they were all elementals of some kind?
Probably, because I don't see people ghosts a lot. I never really have. I would like to. I find that would be very interesting because it makes me not believe in the people ghosts. And I would love to believe in the people ghosts because I would wonder if my grandma was watching out for me. But I've never seen any of them. And it kind of makes me sad because I want to, but I only see whatever the hell these things are.
What do you think shadow people are? What's your theory about that?
I think they're protrusions from another dimension. My mom always would say to me, everything has a scientific explanation. And I feel like shadow people and the Fae and any of them like that actually just live in a dimension nearby. And sometimes they poke through, kind of like the three-dimensional person has to poke their finger through the plane where the two-dimensional person lives in order for the two-dimensional person to observe them. Kind of like that. I think they're protrusions.
And it does seem like some people, for whatever reason, their brain chemistry or whatnot, makes it so that they're able to perceive those protrusions when they happen, whereas other people cannot.
Yeah.
Well, that is quite armful of stories and things that you've experienced.
Thanks so much for inviting me to talk to you guys. You can come take a tour with me. Go to the website, salemhistoricaltours.com. I give the Haunted Footsteps ghost tours right now. I'm probably going to do other ones this coming season as well. But if you want the ghost tour, you can give them a call. And they book even private tours. So if you wanted one off season, you can still get one. My tour TikTok is Salem Uncensored. And it's all run together one word. So at Salem Uncensored.
Excellent. And people can follow you on TikTok at Girl Henry Rollins and on Instagram at Girl Henry Rollins as well.
Yeah, that's the one.
And we'll have links to that in our show notes at homespunhaints.com and in the show notes that accompany this episode that are embedded in the podcast player.
Awesome.
Well, Hainted Loves, I hope you enjoyed this very broad collection of stories of shadow people and elementals and very, very creepy local legends. Our guest has been everywhere and seen a lot of really unusual things. This was truly a joy to listen to. So thank you so much for sharing all that with us. We appreciate it. For those of you who are interested in checking out this episode on Instagram and TikTok, you can follow us at Homespun Haints, Instagram and TikTok. And you can also, again, check out our website, homespunhaints.com. And if you're interested in supporting the show, please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/homespunhaints. Our patrons get all sorts of bonus contents and all of these episodes ad-free. Girl Henry Rollins, thanks again once more for coming on a second time. This has been such a delight to talk to you. Always a good time chatting with you. You have such a depth of knowledge about everything you talk about. It's really, really a joy to chat with you.
Thank you. I'm blushing.
That was great. Listeners, we double dog dare you to have a spooky day.
Homespun Haints is hosted by Becky Kielimnik and Diana Doty, and produced by Homespun Haints Media LLC. Editing and music by Becky Kielimnik. Show notes by Diana Doty. If you have a ghost story and you'd like to be considered as a guest for this podcast, please visit our website at homespunhaints.com/submit.